Hey everyone and welcome to another video guys, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a few of my recent findings from my coaching sessions. Now, over the past 2-ish months, I've done a hell of a lot of gold and platinum mid lane specific coaching sessions, and I've started to see some trends forming. Now, I've been really reflecting a lot, thinking about, okay, what's working, what's not working, what am I seeing? Is there any core patterns here that describe or actually explain why certain people are stuck in gold for a long period of time and some people are stuck in platinum for a very long period of time? And I think I've been able to identify a pretty core fundamental error here. Yes, there's the inevitable in-game stuff like poor base timers and jungle tracking and leaning, stuff like that. We're not really going to be talking about that today. We're going to be talking about why people get stuck at a rank for a very long period of time, why they just simply don't improve. Like, I just don't understand it. Why does one person just skim through gold and then the other person just is there for years? So I've really been trying to figure this out. Now, today, what I'm going to be really sharing with you is something that I believe might be one of the single biggest breakthroughs I've ever had in coaching, or especially at least in the last 2 years. Now, hopefully, I don't over exaggerate here. This is just the way I feel right now. Hopefully you guys by the end of this video feel the same way about this as I do. Look, I might be completely wrong, and I'm going to try my best to explain what I'm seeing here. And I'm going to use examples later on in the video to explain what we're going to cover. But bear with me, all right, as we go through this video. So today, what we're going to be talking about is the importance of actually having your own hypotheses. And what I mean by hypotheses, we're not going to be using the scientific definition from the dictionary. This is just my definition in reference to League of Legends anyway, is making a decision based off intention, no matter how poor that decision is. A decision that is proactively made through variable assessment rather than simply just reacting to what someone else does or something that actually happens naturally in the game. Now, when you think about it, making decisions based off intention, this is just the bread and butter. This is at the core of improving at any skill. It doesn't necessarily even have to be League of Legends. If you want to improve at anything, you got to have some sense of intention. You got to know why you're doing what you're doing or why you're making that decision. Now, when it comes to other skills in real life, I've kind of compartmentalized it into two separate, I would say, categories of improvement. You've got skills that don't really require much hypothesis or much intention. For example, mindless improvement through running, right? I don't need to be an expert out there or even have that much intention when going for a run. I just go out there, run as far as I can go, and then if I keep doing that, eventually I'm going to run further and further and further. I might cap out, right? Because I'm not doing things properly, but I'm still going to get a significant amount of improvement. Now, compare that with chess, for example. You got to have intentional improvement. Otherwise, you're just not going to get anywhere. If you sit me in front of a chessboard and I have no idea what's going on, or I don't understand, or I'm not thinking about the consequences of my actions, like I move my pawn here or my knight here, and I'm not thinking about why I'm doing that or what the enemy's response is to that decision or what's going to happen in 2-3 moves from now, what am I learning here? Yes, there's probably going to be an element of maybe muscle memory or instinctual learning, some form like that, but largely you're not really going to get anywhere. Yes, you might get the basics down, but then you're just going to get capped out. And that's the way I kind of view League. So in terms of clarification, let's actually use a few League-specific examples here, right? A hypothesis in the game can literally be as simple as, I want to use my cues like this in order to achieve that result. So for example, I'm playing Orianna. I want to time my Qs with the enemy minions getting low so I can increase my chances of getting poke. They can be as advanced as, I need to push the pace of this lane by spamming my Q through the wave onto the enemy so that I can actually prevent this talent from roaming. And the quality and the consistency of these hypotheses should in theory actually improve as you climb, like I actually mentioned in my previous video, how I actually mentioned how one of the big differences between, say, a Diamond 4 and then a Diamond 2 and then a Master Tier and a Grandmaster is that by the time you're around Grandmaster, every single decision you make, whether they're doing it consciously or not, they literally are making a hypothesis with everything. They know exactly why they're doing this with the wave. They know exactly why they are going for that fight. And they may not be able to explain it in the moment, but after in the review, they can tell you, I did this because of X, Y, Z. And this seems very stock standard, right? But you'd be surprised at how many times throughout a VOD, I look at a coaching session and I ask them, like, why'd you do this? And like, I have no idea. I actually just wasn't thinking, I'll be honest with you. And this is a massive problem. So one other note here before we go in, guys, is these hypotheses can actually be updated throughout the game through the usage of calibration traits. And I'm going to be showing you what this looks like later on with examples within my own gameplay. Or they can just be updated in the post-game review. All right, and again, this is going to make sense as we really get into the nitty gritty here. Now, let's actually list out the advantages of having a hypothesis at each and every given moment. The first one here, which is the absolute core one, is we are able to complete the learning cycle, where we're going to have a theory going in, we're going to execute upon that within that game, then we're going to be able to go into the post-game review it, and then we're going to be able to take those learnings and then execute upon it in the next game. Absolutely crucial. If we do not come in with a hypothesis and we don't do this step here, we're not going to be able to execute upon that. And if we don't execute upon that, what are we going to look for in the review? And then there's nothing we can actually take away from the next game. Now, if we just simply react to everything that happens in the game, we actually get very little learning. They get all the learning because they're the ones making the decisions, the enemies or your teammates. But if you don't actively make any of these decisions or have a theory behind your decisions, you're just not learning. Literally, you're just not going anywhere. You're just stuck in the mud. And you actually hear me talk a lot about within my coaching sessions or within my content, the concept of being proactively reactive. You can actually choose to be reactive or choose to just simply react in the face of all of the options. If you think about maybe a simple game, you're playing Oriana versus Diana. And you can have all these options at any given time. I can shove, I can freeze, I can push and reset, I can roam, I can hold the wave here, I can aggressively posture, I can do all of these things. One of these might simply be, you know what, I actually want to sit back and react. That is okay. If you are actively processing all of these variables, or at least some of the variables, and actually coming to the conclusion that you just want to simply to react to what the Diana does, I don't care. You know what? Then we can go into the review, we actually look at it and be like, okay, why did you, or what variables did you consider that led you to come to the conclusion that you just wanted to simply react? And that is okay. And sometimes the optimal choice is to be proactively reactive. And that's what I mean by being proactively reactively. And this actually ties directly into pain plus reflection equals progress. We got to have that painful experience. You know, you might have a hypothesis, execute upon it, and it just completely fails, and you lose the game for your team or you lose a lane because of it. But you know what? This is how we actually progress. We have this painful experience, we reflect on it, which is getting into the review, and then we actually have some form of progress to execute upon in the next game, rinse, repeat, go on, so forth. The second advantage is that we're actually able to see what we do and don't know, what factors and variables we currently are able to actually process, right? If I go into a VOD and I see this a lot, actually quite often in the Mid Lane Academy is, you know, I'm looking at a decision here. And if you choose to stay here, right? And maybe let's just say you didn't even choose to stay, you just stayed. Say you weren't thinking, you were somewhat autopiloting whatever you're doing, and you just stayed here in lane. You weren't thinking about getting a reset, you weren't thinking about taking a trade, what you needed to do, nothing. Well, I can't actually get into the review with you because I don't know what factors you can and can't assess. I don't know what variables you're actually able to process. But if you say to me, Curtis, look, okay, I actually chose to stay here because I thought this, I saw the jungler here, I thought I had enough gold or enough strength or durability to get to this amount of gold, I thought that giving tempo over the enemy didn't mean that much, so on and so forth, and great. Then I know specifically what is going wrong or what concepts you don't understand. And like, okay, now we can slowly introduce this next layer into your decision making. Or maybe you're overemphasizing this variable when you don't really need to be considering this variable. And that's where we can really make progress within coaching sessions, or whether it's in your own improvement or your own reviews, that's where you can really start to make some progress. Third one here is that we are able to actually increase the likelihood of certain events occurring, playing our own game versus someone else's game, right? If we come into the lane and we have a plan, and what happens over time, whenever you come in with a hypothesis, going back to this first point here, you come in with a theory, we execute, we review, and then we execute again. What's going to happen is that you're going to get very, very good at replicating certain things. For me, when I go into a game versus Fizz, into a given matchup, I basically know exactly how my first 4 or 5 levels are going to play out to the T a lot of the time. And the only reason I've been able to do this is because I've actually completed the learning cycle. I came in with a theory. I've been able to review what factors and variables I was and wasn't able to actually assess in the game. And I've been able to refine this again and again and again. So I can actually increase through my decisions the likelihood of certain events occurring. If I want the wave on my side and I know exactly what I need to do, then I can pretty much replicate this sort of thing. And the last little advantage is that we actually are forced to play with intensity. right? If you don't, it's actually impossible to come in with a hypothesis and execute upon it without really playing with intensity. So it's actually another cheat little way of hacking intensity. And last little note here, guys, this is actually the opposite to autopiloting. I get asked all the time, guys, and I actually made a video on it, and I wish I really explored this concept, was, people say, just stop autopiloting, or a coach will tell you, just stop autopiloting, or a friend will even tell you this, you're just autopiloting, just stop it. Well, what does stop mean? What's the opposite of autopiloting? This is the opposite. This is the actionable thing that you can do instead of autopiloting. And a lot of the main reason I actually think a lot of people autopilot it is because they don't actually know what to do otherwise. They're just, okay, well, if I'm going to autopilot, if I don't autopilot, what do you expect me to do? They just say, just try. But what does try mean? No, try means actually theorize or make a decision based off variables. You're actually thinking about stuff. So I'm finding this to be a very actionable way of helping people to stop autopiloting as well. Now, if having a hypothesis is so incredibly effective and important, why doesn't everyone just do it? Isn't it just common sense at the end of the day? If you want to get better at a skill or get better at anything, aren't you going to come in with some rough hypothesis or some rough theory about your decision, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, see the result, and then continue that learning process again, whether it's consciously or subconsciously? For some people, I do truly believe it is somewhat common sense, whether it's because of their upbringing or their experiences, their environment, or things that they were taught to do, or whatever reason. I truly believe it is natural to some people. I think, like myself, when I was growing up, I was very good at every game I played. I skipped through the ranks in League of Legends. I went straight from gold to diamond, from diamond to challenger. I didn't dwell at any rank. And compare this to some people, they're stuck at gold for 3 seasons, or they're stuck at platinum for 4 seasons, or they're stuck at diamond for 4 seasons. And when I was younger, I never really understood this. And I just truly believe this was just common sense. Or maybe I contributed this to natural talent. I don't know. But upon reflection now, really thinking about this and really getting into the details, I think that there are some key or core reasons why people haven't had the opportunity to go through this process, whether it's in the past or some defense mechanisms or some just mental blocks. So what I'm going to do now is really try and break down and theorize. Look, these are just my theories. I'm not a psychologist at the end of the day, so take this with a grain of salt. This is just what I believe, what I've seen within my coaching sessions, why some of these people are stuck at their rank for an extended period of time. Now, the first one I think is the most common is that it's actually painful to try and potentially fail. Whether this is a conscious or subconscious response, I often see people stuck at low gold or gold and low plat because they're just actually afraid. They're afraid that if they come in with a theory and then they see that it was actively wrong or it actually created a disastrous response, they don't want to have that burden. It's easier to just go through and have the excuse that, I didn't try, it's my teammate's fault, blame all the externals and bullshit, the matchmaking, the MMR, whatever it is. It's like a defense mechanism. I think people are just afraid to expose themselves. If I really give my all here and I come in and I actively try to get better at this, if I still lose or I still make that mistake, then holy crap, there's nothing protecting him anymore. I'm just exposed. That's painful. I don't want to go through that. I actually feel like a lot of people have this response. I think the other one again here, it feels scary to take control and actually make these proactive calls. Maybe they're scarred in the past because people have flamed them out of, flame them to shit. I don't know. Or maybe they actually don't know how to review these decisions anyway. So why bother, right? If you make this decision and you get into the review, you're like, well, you know what? I actually don't know how to review this. I actually don't even know how to get better. So what's the point? What's the point of me making a theory and getting into the review and doing this if I don't even know how to improve myself anyway? So they just give up. They just give all control or give all power to the externals and their teammates and stuff like that. And they just play the victim and they sit there for an extended period of time. Or maybe there's actually information overload. Right? They have no idea that they're thinking of all these things or reasons why something didn't work. And instead of making a decision based off these variables, they make no decision. So for example, let's just say you had to decide between shoving and freezing, right? You may think to yourself, okay, do I freeze? I got to think about jungle location, the amount of gold, my resources, my champion identity. Do I need to roam? Is it okay for me to give tempo? All this stuff. And they just give up. Like, screw it. I actually have no idea. There's too many pieces of information here. I'm just not going to make any decision. It's like analysis paralysis. I actually seen quite a few people do this as well. And the last one here is that some people, maybe they're just a passive person. They haven't engaged in this sort of process before. Potentially this ties to some form of fixed mindset. I'm not sure. Again, I'd love to hear your theories in the comment section as well. And I truly believe, guys, this is the reason we see people stuck at a given rank for years. I think this is it. this failure to have intention. So what we're going to do now is go through and actually show you what this looks like. So you guys in the chat right now, or in the YouTube world, can actually go into your own games and see if this resonates with you. If you have a very similar experience, and this could be a little bit confronting, because you know what, it's going to be painful again to just admit to yourself that I have not been engaging in having a hypothesis. I haven't been completing this learning cycle. And this might actually be the reason I've been stuck in my given rank for an extended period of time. I don't know. So we're going to do a gold Diana one, a diamond Oriana one here, and then one of my own VODs here showing you how I do a calibration trade. I have a hypothesis, test it, and then instantly calibrate and then change the way I use an ability based off what happens in the game. So that's a nice little interesting way of speeding up the learning process. So with this VOD here, this was a gold Diana versus a LeBlanc. And I remember going through this VOD with the client, and we're just chilling. We're talking about trades and so on and so forth. He's taking some solid trades versus LeBlanc. The Diana here also has TP. Vi comes in for a gank and it ends up blowing the flash, I believe, from the LeBlanc, which was great. Brilliant. Lee Sin shows up in the area as well. LeBlanc has no more corrupting pots, and I was like, all right, let's just see what the Diana does here. Let's just see what their next move is. So we're watching, and let's just first play it through and see what happens. We're just chilling. We know Vi is moving onto the bot side to get that bot scuttle, and then maybe looking for a bot gank or something like that. We know Lee Sin's on the top river here. We're just chilling. There's Lee Sin on the top ward. We're still just chilling here. And then we just die. Okay? We blow flash and then we die. Now, look, I don't mind. I don't really care about the dying element. I don't really care about the lack of map awareness element. I don't care about any of that. What I care about here is that there was zero thought going on. I remember asking the client and I was saying, well, what was going on here? Did you have an intention about when you were going to reset? Did you have an intention about what LeBlanc's game plan was within this game, or how you could counter that? Because LeBlanc, at the end of the day, is designed to set up ganks. Did you have any idea with what you wanted to do with the wave, with how much gold you wanted to reset on, how you were going to replenish your resources, how you could minimize while Vi's making you play bot side? What's going on? What variables were you were and weren't considering? Because then I can actually get into the review and see what we need to work on. But there was nothing. There was no thought about when you're going to reset, what sort of trades, how you need to use your Q in this situation, where do you needed to lean, so on and so forth. There was nothing. So you die here. So you go into the review, you say this, I wasn't even here reviewing it. There's nothing to take away. It's like end of review. I mean, what do I learn from this? What does the Diana learn from this situation? Look, if in this situation she actually thought, okay, I know my Vi's making a play bot. I know I have TP right now. You know what? I know Lee Sin's in the area, but I'm confident that if I lean onto the bot side here, maybe get a little bit more gold, I can go back for a pink ward, an amp tomb, and a refillable. And I'll be all good. That was my game plan. If he said that, or the Diana in this situation said that, but still died, I don't really care, because then we can really figure out what was it. There's a lack of understanding of LeBlanc's identity. Was it a lack of understanding of the amount of gap closing or threat that Lee Sin has, or the strength of their 2v2? Was it there a lack of understanding of, or underestimating the amount of durability that you have with your W? I don't know. So this is exactly what I mean with the importance of having a hypothesis about any aspect of the game. There was no hypothesis about ability usage, Q usage, about wave state, about resets, about role in the comp, about how the LeBlanc has to play. There was no hypothesis about any of these aspects. And all we would need to do to improve is actually have hypotheses about one of them. And what you'll notice is that if you have a hypothesis about how you want to use Q, usually that will tie into the wave state, usually that will tie into when you're going to get resets, so on and so forth. It's like a flow-on effect. All you need to do is have one hypothesis, and then you'll start to realize, holy crap, there's so many elements of the game that I can actually improve on. So this is exactly what I mean by lack of intention, lack of hypotheses, and it's making it very, very difficult to improve. Now, in this example, this was a Diamond Oriana player. So the quality of your hypotheses, or the quality of your intention, should be much higher. You should have much more hypotheses about the ranging aspects of the game. You should be thinking about your wave state all the time, what sort of trades, what sort of game pace, what your role is in the composition, how you're going to utilize your TP, when you're actually going to reset, what's the optimal amount of gold in this matchup that you would want to reset on, that sort of thing. So I remember, again, I was going through this coaching session with the client here, and I was thinking to myself, okay, well, let's see what the Oriana does. There's Corrupting Pot versus Doran's. She has TP. There's not much gang threat here because we have a ward onto one side safely. There's a lot of things that we have a lot of freedom. As I was playing it through, let's just see what the Orianna does. She ends up chilling, takes a Q out of the face, throws the Q out randomly, walks up a little bit here, goes for a nice little QW, nice. And I was watching this through, I was starting to think to myself, okay, what does this Orianna want to do here? Like, what are we trying to bring about? What situation in the future are we trying to bring about? So we fast forward here in a second. We just mindlessly, we're just chilling. No wards, no leaning, relaxing, no intention with the way we're using our abilities, no intention with our movement. We're not really thinking about when we're going to reset or how we're going to use our TP here or how can we utilize our corrupting pot advantage or nothing. And then we just get a nice little reset here. Now, the Orianna in this situation gets away with it because this Victor is actually probably very close to clueless as well. But because this Victor actually has Dorans and 2 pots, the Victor actually comes out a little bit ahead here because we got no value from utilizing or we got no value from taking corrupting pot. We weren't even able to get a single pot out of the Victor. And I remember going back here and getting into the view and I was asking the Orianna, say, well, what were you trying to bring about here? What variables, what was your hypothesis? What was your game plan? What was your theory? There was no response. There was no thought process about what they wanted to do with the wave, when they wanted to reset, how they could abuse the corrupting bot versus Doran ring, how they should optimally use their ration out their mana or use their Q in this situation. Nothing. Now the problem with this is that yes, sometimes you can get away with it and you're playing a scaling champion and it's all good. But again, there's very little learning going on. Yes, it's not even about the win or loss. It's literally just purely about the learning. If you come into this situation and we had a hypothesis about any of it, about the game pace, about how you can utilize TP effectively, how you can posture more aggressively to get better quality here, any aspect of the game, then we can actually get more value from my coaching, and you guys are going to get more value out of your reviews. This is the worst thing that you could possibly do. And this is exactly what I mean. So what I urge you guys to do is go back into your reviews. And if you find yourself this sort of thing happening, it's a problem. It's just a huge bloody problem that you need to identify and just need to eradicate. Please just have a hypothesis, have a random theory at any aspect. Prevent this at all costs. Prevent it at all costs, please. Now here, this was a VOD of me playing Yone into Zed, and I hadn't really played this matchup before, and I was in the process of learning Yone. And I had no idea about the way I should be using my E in the matchup. So what I did, I went for what I call a calibration trade. And this is how you can actually complete that learning cycle in a very short period of time within the game itself rather than waiting for the post-game review. So what I did, I had a theory of, you know what, let's just see what happens if I just use my E super aggressively. So I walk up here and I just randomly use my E and try to punish the level 3 versus level 2 advantage. I take a isolated Q to the face and end up just missing my Q, and it just didn't seem like an effective way to use my ability. And then I remember making a mental note after this thing, thinking to myself, Curtis, okay, interesting. If I don't actually wait for Zed to use his Q, then I'm just going to take an isolated Q to the face every time, then he can just Q auto E me, and then they proc electrocute and I lose the trade. So I remember, okay, interesting. Maybe I have to kind of use this ability somewhat reactively. So in that case, proactively, reactively. I'm choosing, out of all the options, the way I can use my E to use it reactively after Zed has already used his abilities. Or as a dodging mechanism, if he chooses to use his WEQ combo onto me, I can maybe use it forward aggressively. So if we fast forward in the VOD here later on, then I start to test this theory. So moving on here a little bit later into the game, I've been holding my E a lot more, and then Zed goes for a combo onto me. And instead of like using it, you know, without waiting for Zed to use abilities, I then use it to the side to dodge Qs and then look for a nice little short trade. Now, it's not this specific example that's important. It's more the theory behind it. I had a hypothesis about how I wanted to use my E, a calibration trade. It didn't work out that well, and then I kind of have another theory, and then I choose to update this again and again and again. And as you get more experience with the game, you can kind of do this within miniature aspects. It can be as specific about how you want to use an ability. It can be as specific. It could even be as more overarching as like an overarching game plan, which is kind of hard to test within a game. But what you can actually test is wave states. You might find that, you know, level 4, you hold the wave on your side and it feels really good. and then you try the opposite and it doesn't feel that good, so then by level 7 you can hold the wave on your side again and rinse repeat. There's ways of calibrating within the game itself to update that hypothesis, test it, theorize it, and then continue that learning process. And this is kind of what I do in a lot of my matchups, especially throughout the learning process of learning a new champion. And this is really how I believe I improve. And I kind of do this naturally in many aspects, and I've kind of done it naturally, but in the process of making these videos, what I've been trying to do is really question what makes it such that I'm able to improve at a faster rate, and really trying to bring these things that I do naturally to the forefront to share it with you guys and give you guys some of that advice. So hopefully this helps. Let me know how this goes in the comment section. But again, I just made up these terms as well. Calibration trade, I just pulled it out of my ass. I tried to come up with something that would make a little bit of sense. So let me know if this works for you guys. Now, this topic, guys, actually scares me to cover. And the reason I was a little bit afraid to make this video is that I actually see this a lot in real life as well. And I think it might be a little bit confronting to a lot of people. We get comfortable. We get in our comfort zone. We don't push our limits. We're scared of just pushing ourselves and actually failing. So what I urge you to do after this video, guys, is reflect. Yes, this might be apparent in your league experience, your ranked solo queue experience, but where else in your life has this been an issue? Maybe you haven't pushed yourself in the gym or with health and fitness, whether it's like a relationship thing or school or studying, whatever it is. Where else have you kind of developed this fear or lack of intention or lack of hypothesis in other areas? So really take some time to dwell on this. And this might get a little bit uncomfortable, but you know what? Like, I feel like at the end of the day, we just got to face it. I mean, it's inevitable. At some point, we're going to get exposed. At some point, we're going to be stuck somewhere and we're going to plateau, and we have to make a choice. Are we comfortable? Are we happy being in this plateau? And maybe that's right. Maybe you're okay being stuck or being at that specific position, but for other people, maybe not so much. And you aren't actually going to be able to go from having zero hypothesis and zero intention all the way to having a hypothesis with every single wave state or something like that. It's just not the case. So what I recommend is start by setting yourself very small goals. It might even be as simple as, I'm going to have a hypothesis about when I want to reset for the first 5 minutes of the game. Or maybe I want to have a hypothesis about or have intention with how I want to play my trades for the first base. Or maybe even I want to have a theory about, the way I want to use my TP this game. That's it. Start by picking one area and then get into the review. And this is how you're going to really be able to improve at specific areas of your game. And reflect on what the alternative is to doing this. If you don't want to do this, or you say this is bullshit, then what's the alternative? What's the alternative the alternative to having a hypothesis is not having a hypothesis, which is essentially autopiloting or not going anywhere. So at the end of the day, if you actually think about what your life would look like, or what sort of player you would be if you were to continue this trajectory, I don't know, what does it look like? I'm assuming you're just going to be stuck at the same level of play or making very, very little improvement or very little gains in terms of your ranked solo queue experience. So this can often actually be a source of motivation. And if you are finding it overwhelming to even start, just create a hypothesis only using very limited number of variables. If you're thinking about, say, how you want to use your TP, you might only at the beginning only be assessing 2 variables to help you make that decision, wave state and gold amount. That's okay. And then we can get into the coaching, or you can get a friend, or you can watch some of my videos to think about what are some other variables that can help me improve the quality of my TPs. Whether it's thinking about my champion's identity. Can I use it elsewhere in the game? Is tempo even that important here? Could I have juiced the quality of the trades in the lane to actually create more of a resource advantage? Getting really into the details there. So good luck, guys. I hope this kind of sheds a little bit of insight here. And hopefully you kind of understand why I think this is such a big breakthrough. Again, it might be just hogwash. Feel free to let me know in the comments, and I'll see you for the next video. Cheers.